Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I want to share with you a tutorial on how to make this paper magnolia. And so I know that magnolias, a lot of times they'll bloom in the spring and they have that pink and white beautiful striped, like gorgeous leaves and petals. I think this is the white evergreen magnolia where the petals are just white and it blooms later in the year closer to autumn. Now, I'm not sure that they're technically Christmas flowers, however I've seen a lot of decor using magnolias. It's got that really timeless beauty to it, I think, with just the white petals. I've seen a lot of the leaves and the actual flower being used in Christmas decor, so I thought that I would make this template and tutorial at this time of the year. I mean, I actually really love this flower because I think it, again, I think the third time I've said this, it's timeless. It's got that really beautiful, simple look to it, and I think that while I don't have much of a style, I think that's what I gravitate towards. So I think that this is a great flower to use in any of your decor if you don't want to use poinsettias, which is a typical Christmas flower. And let's get started. I'll show you what I do. So I have leaves here, but I have not glued them down, so when I move this, I can pick up the leaves. So I just want to show a quick close-up. The center is the thing that I thought would be the most difficult to do, but I think I figured out a great way to do it. So for this template, I am calling it template 28, only because template 27 is my amaryllis flower. I have a 4-inch wide circle here for the base, and that is in regular white cardstock. And then I have my template 28 petals, which are the two different petals. One is the sort of base petal, the bigger petal, and then one for the inside part. So if you look at pictures of magnolias, it has that great look because of all the different shaped petals. And in a lot of templates, it's great if you could just use one petal. Makes it nice and even. You don't have to do a lot of extra work. But I think it's worth it to have two different petals here. So this is 4 inches wide here. And this petal here is 2 1/4 inches wide. That's just what I used in terms of the petal for this flower. I am making it just a little different than this here. So I'd use 6 petals here, so 2 layers of 3 petals, and then 1 layer of that inner smaller petal, 3 petals. And so what I did here is that I actually have 8 petals so that I could do 2 separate layers rather than 3 per layer. I'll do 4, and then also 4 of that inner petal here. So you can mix and match, and if you're making a backdrop of different magnolias, what you can do is simply mix up the number of petals. Maybe you can use 4 on the first layer and then 3 in the second. You can add different looks so that they don't all look so uniform if you make them the same way in your backdrop. So these are the same. I just wanted to point out that I am making it just a little bit different so that the look is changed, although again it's still a magnolia. And then for the center, what I did was I created these little pieces here. I'm going to show a close-up. Now this is kind of like a sun. I'm going to include a short clip at the end of this video of how I made this. You don't necessarily have to do something like this. You could just use a strip of paper like this and cut a fringe. I'll show you what I did with this. So this is just a scrap piece of paper that I found in my scrap box, and I'll be using this to make the center too. So I have 5 pieces of this shape here. I'm not sure that I'll use all of them, but I had extra just in case I wanted to make it fuller. And this is just a 1-inch circle that I want to use to cover up some of the bottom portions of the petal when I glue it to the base. So putting it together is really easy. Just have a glue gun, pair of scissors, folder. This foam folder will be linked below if you want to see where I purchased it. You can buy it at any craft store. And I just have a pair of, I think, fabric scissors because it came on a kit with other fabric items. I have this here because it's really sharp and I can make small cuts with it. So to start, what I do is I take my actual petal, the larger petal, and I split it into 2 piles, so equal number, whatever number per layer that you want. And then the first layer of petals, I want that to sit lower towards the sort of desk. So I don't want that to sit as high. And what that means is when I cut it, I want to cut it with a longer slit. So longer slit means that when you do glue the two flaps together, it will rest at a lower degree than one with a shorter slit. So I want to cut that down the middle. And I would say my cut is about 2 3/4 inches long. It doesn't have to be exact. I do think that a little bit of variation gives it an actual look of a flower rather than the same size each time. That's kind of up to you. So that is the petal that I want for a lower resting petal. And this one I want to cut shorter for a petal that sits taller. So maybe I'll cut this like 2.5 inches or 2.5 inch slit. And then for this petal here, because it's supposed to sit taller and in the center, I do want just a small slit so it is sitting upright. So I'll just make a tiny slit, maybe about 1 inch long. So I want to start with my set of petals that, again, are resting lower. If you don't want to manage the two sizes, you could just cut them all the same. It's not a huge deal. So this is the petal that does sit lower. And then I'll just do one with the petal sitting a little bit taller. And you may not be able to see it, but this one actually sits, you see less of the petal on camera. That means this sits taller. I'm sorry to belabor that. I think that just adds a nice dimension to your flowers because these are 3D flowers, and that does matter if you're doing a large display. So with this, you can cut off these tails here that's created by the slit, but you don't have to. I don't in this case. So I want to glue down one petal, and then I use the first petal to guide me where to glue the other ones. But I will finish gluing these first. And because there's not a huge base to glue this onto, I just add one dot of glue rather than a line of glue. That will just save your fingers from getting burned later. So in arranging this, again, the first petal kind of sets where the other petals go. I want them to kind of be equally spaced between each other. It's sort of in a square pattern. It would be easiest to glue this petal first, directly across the first petal that we put down here. And then you can add the other two petals. And then just your second layer next. You can see that a 4-petal flower or 4-petal layer will give you a wider flower than a 3-petal one because there's one more petal there. So when you are using more petals, obviously that would give you a wider flower. I would say this one's about 6 to 8 inches, while this one's more about 9 to 10 or 9 to 11 inches wide. Here, it's just a matter of gluing these petals in between the layers before it. So this petal goes between these two petals here. And I seem to be doing this a lot lately. I've been making a lot of tutorials on paper flowers, and I tend to forget what I've said and what I haven't said. I also am fairly nervous when I make these tutorials, so I sort of refilm the same thing over and over until I get it right. But I did want to mention this actual paper that I used. So the base here is just plain white cardstock. That's what I get from Michael's. It's a 50-piece pack. The petal here, the paper that I use is called Natural. So like this is a natural looking color. And it's by Basil, and I purchased this at Joann's. I will leave the link below if I can find the link to this paper here, but it is a thicker cardstock. It's not a beige, but it's an off-white, and I think this one's perfect for magnolias. And I purchased this paper when it was on sale at Joann's for like 6 for $1, which is great price. Each flower takes about 2 pieces of cardstock. For this flower here, it took 2, so it takes just a little bit less than 2 for this flower here with 1 less petal per layer. So I definitely think you can really stretch your money here if you're making a display and you don't want to spend too much money. This is a great option, I think. Yeah, I didn't mean to say that after I started making the paper flowers, but I had just remembered. But I thought that was such a beautiful color of not quite bright white, but something close. I just did want to mention it because I think that color is just beautiful. It's a nice rich color So we do have the first 2 layers of the petals here, and then it's just a matter of moving on to this petal. And what I like to do with this petal is I take my bone folder and I give it just a very slight curl. It's almost like I'm not even really bending it, it's just I'm putting it between my finger and the bone folder, that edge. I'm just slowly sliding it, and it gives it a very slight curl, as you can see. And then when you glue it, just add a little dot of glue, and then it gives you that petal that looks great in the center. It sort of covers that flower center that we'll make. I love that look about magnolias, and so it's just a simple process for this portion of the flower. So I've been really into making more realistic flowers, ones that are actually modeled after flowers that we'll see in nature, but also ones that make very easily. So I think this is one of them. I think the effort is absolutely worth it compared to like maybe a rose, and I think there's minimal prep. Okay, so from here, I actually glue these first onto the petal. I try to cover up some of the tails from the petals that we had glued down before, but if we don't cover up any of that, that's why I have this circle here. So you can see it sort of cups that center in there. It kind of creates a nice little pocket for your flower center. And then you just take that little circle and add it right in the center. And then you do cover up the tails, so. Okay, so then now it's just a matter of working on the flower center. So again, I have these little sun pieces here, and I do believe I have more than I think I'll use. So I actually have 6 of them. And what I do here is I just curl up those ends, sort of perpendicular. I want them to look like they're the little stamens. A magnolia center looks very complicated, and I kind of struggled with how I wanted to do these so that they looked realistic, but that anyone can make them. So I take a number of these and I just stack them on top of each other to sort of get that look. Because to me it kind of looks like a pineapple, and I wasn't sure how to make a pineapple out of paper and at that small scale. So I had just taken them and then curled them upwards like this, and then sort of squished it together as best as I can, and then glue that towards the center of the center, and it just kind of builds a layer of those small stamen looking things. I did want to curl them separately so that it looks, unique. If you had just stacked them all together and then curled them all at once, it may not have enough dimension to it. And then what I like to do with these is I actually go into the little piece that I made and I cut it so that the little stamen, or like each ray on the sun, can actually stick up taller. So I just kind of go in and I cut a little bit so that it's actually kind of cut closer towards the center. I sort of just extend that cut, and that way it lets the stamen pieces, I guess, they can stick up higher. So I can bend these up higher, because what I want is something that actually curves in eventually, kind of like a pineapple. What you can do also is just use a smaller piece of these. I didn't want to spend forever cutting these out. When these are sort of delicate enough, it's hard for the machine to cut unless it takes an hour, so I didn't want that. So for these last 2, I'm just doing that cut, but the first ones you didn't have to. And if this is too much work, you could just forego it and just use maybe a small fringe cut center, just roll it up, and that should be fine. I just wanted to see if I can make something close to what it looks in real life. And then after you do this one last piece of that sunburst thing, you get something that sort of looks like a dandelion. If you see the dandelion weeds in the spring or the summer, it kind of looks like that, but I also want to give it a little more height, which is why I have this piece here. And with this, what I want to do is I just want to create a really thin fringe, and I'm doing this all freehand. It takes about a minute. You don't have to be exact with it. That's the reason why I have this scissor too. I feel like it's much easier to make such small cuts. I am making very tiny cuts, and I'm going to roll this up and put it right in that center. I also grabbed a piece that I knew would be bigger, or I should say taller than what I wanted. If I just had a tiny slip of paper and I tried to do this fringe, it would kind of be a disaster. So this is taller than what I want so that I can cut it easier, and then I'm going to snip it later to shorten it. So I don't need a huge piece. And again, I said this is taller than what I need. I can just go and snip it shorter. And then I can also snip it across the top so that it's shorter, and I'm going to do this over my trash can so I don't have to pick all that up later. So that the end result is something like this. And then I just roll this up. Add a little bit of glue so that it doesn't unravel, and then glue on the bottom, and then you just stick that right in the middle of that piece that you made with all of those little sun pieces. So to me it looks like what the magnolia centers usually look like in pictures, and just simply glue this in the center. And then you're basically done with your flower. I think this flower needs leaves, so that's why I had those there. And I just want to give you a close-up. So we're done with the flower portion, and what I like to do is just take a piece of green paper. This is the darkest green paper that I have at my fingertips. I do think I have some more in my storage area, but for the leaves it's so easy. You could just fold a piece of paper in half and then cut out a leaf shape. So I like to do these freehand because I like the look of different shaped leaves. So if it's more unique, I like that better. This turned out to be more round than I normally make my leaves. And then I just crease it at an angle. So here's a half leaf, and I'm folding it at an angle to get those lines in a leaf. So this is the most simple way to make a leaf for your flower. So I keep folding it sort of at the same width, so that when I pull it out, it has those lines there. And then you open it up, and then you're gonna have a leaf. So I think that looks perfect. It's simple. I just talked way more than I actually did anything. So you can see that you do it way quicker than I would if you were actually making these. I think the overall effect is gorgeous. I love these. I'm actually gonna make a couple of them for my display. I've been making these flowers in these tutorials, and I'm saying, oh, I want to make this and I want to make that. So I better cool it with that. But definitely I will be doing these magnolias because I think they're gorgeous. Let me know if you have any questions below, or if you have any comments. Are you using magnolias in your decor? Thank you so much for watching. Bye.